The engine room hummed with a relentless pulse, the metallic heart of the Harbinger thrumming beneath Mirror Talon's deft hands. She wiped the grime from her forehead, the scent of oil and steam thick in the air, mingling with the faint brine seeping through the ship's hull. The crew had long suspected her sharp tongue and skeptical eye were more than mere habit. Now, as she faced Captain Rourke, the weight of her secret pressed upon her like the very currents they sailed within. Rourke stood at the entrance, arms crossed, the flickering lantern light casting harsh shadows across his weathered face. "You've been quiet, Mira. Too quiet for someone who claims the Helm's curse is just a legend. What aren't you telling us?" She met his gaze, amber eyes blazing with a fierce honesty. "It's no legend, Captain. I've tracked the ghost Helm for years before I ever set foot on the Harbinger. My mission isn't just to keep this ship running, it's to make sure this cursed artifact never reaches its destination." A heavy silence followed, broken only by the steady clang of machinery. The implications settled over them like a storm cloud. "Why didn't you say so before?" Rourke's voice was rough, tinged with a mixture of betrayal and relief. "Because I didn't trust anyone," she admitted. "Not after what the Helm did to others. And I still don't know if I can trust you." The revelation rippled through the ship. Word spread quickly, and by midday, the main cabin was thick with tension. The crew sat in uneasy clusters, eyes darting, voices hushed but charged with suspicion. Joran Vex sat at the navigation table, his fingers trembling as he adjusted the instruments. He stole glances at the others, aware that the fragile trust they'd built was cracking. "A curse isn't just superstition," Myra explained to the gathered crew. "It's a force that bends minds, turns friends into foes. It's why previous carriers of the Helm never made it to their destinations. The Helm changes the air around Usmox. The currents darker, the skies heavier." Murmurs rose, some skeptical, some fearful. Rourke raised a hand, commanding silence. "We're here because we have no choice. The Helm's fate is tied to this journey. But I won't let it destroy us from within. That means no more secrets." Yet even as he spoke, the mysterious passenger lingered in the shadows of the cabin, their eyes glinting with unreadable intent. Their silence spoke volumes, and Rourke felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold night air. Later, beneath the star-studded sky on the ship's railing, the passenger's cloak fluttered in the breeze, masking a face lined with quiet calculation. The murmurs of the crew echoed faintly below, but here, the true game was unfolding. Each secret unveiled, each whispered doubt, was a thread in a larger tapestry that none aboard the Harbinger yet fully understood. Back inside, Joran's fingers danced over the navigation charts, the weight of his own past mistakes pressing down. The Helm's curse was not just a phantom menace, it was a living shadow, seeping into the minds of every soul aboard, threatening to unravel their resolve. Rourke paced the deck, his thoughts a tempest. Mira's confession had changed everything. Loyalty was no longer a given. Survival demanded vigilance and sacrifice. The voyage had become more than a test of skill, was a battle to hold on to their very humanity. As the Harbinger surged forward, riding the unpredictable aerial currents, the crew braced themselves. The true nature of the Ghost Helm was awakening, and with it, the darkest trials of their journey were only just beginning. "We all have secrets," Rourke muttered, eyes fixed on the horizon painted with streaks of crimson and gold. "But out here, secrets can be as deadly as any storm." The wind whispered through the rigging, carrying a promise of danger and revelation. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The engineer's secret had set a new course, one that would test every bond and every breath aboard the Harbinger. And in the depths of the haunted skies, trust might be the rarest treasure of all. A sudden metallic groan from the engine room jolted them all, a stark reminder that the ship itself was as fragile as the alliances aboard it. Rourke's hand tightened on the helm's edge, the cursed artifact lying ominously nearby. The night was far from over, and the shadows were closing in. "We move forward," he declared, voice steady but resolute. "But watch your backs. The curse is no longer just legend. It's here." And with that, the Harbinger plunged deeper into the unknown. Its fate intertwined with the engineer's secret and the perilous skies they dared to cross. The air above the submerged islands twisted with the unpredictable currents that had become the lifeblood and the curse of Rourke's voyage. The Harbinger creaked and groaned as it rode one such current. The sails strained against the invisible wind that carried them through the sky. The ghost helm, secured deep within the ship's hold, pulsed with a silent menace, a reminder of the doom that trailed them like a shadow. Captain Rourke stood at the prow, eyes narrowed against the biting wind that whipped his coat and tangled his dark hair. The clouds above had thickened suddenly, vines of storm swirling in unnatural patterns. He sensed it before his lookout shouted. Dark shapes loomed ahead, cutting through the mist like predatory birds. Pirates. Yorick's voice cracked over the din, the navigator clutching his sextant as if it could chart a course through danger itself. From the swirling currents emerged 3 sleek skyships, their black sails marked with the jagged insignia of the Shadewing fleet. At their helms stood Marek Shadewing Kaldar, the pirate captain whose name was whispered in fear across the airborne archipelago. "They seek the helm," Lysa muttered, wiping grease from her hands as she hurried to the engine room. "We can't let them take it." Rourke turned, his gaze hardening. "All hands to battle stations." His voice rang out, steady and commanding, cutting through the rising storm. The crew sprang into action, their earlier tensions dissolved into the crucible of combat. The Harbinger lurched as the first volley of cannon fire tore through the sky, iron singing past their sails. Rourke barked orders, steadying the helmsman. "Steer into the current use, the wind to our advantage." Durick's fingers danced over the navigation instruments, seeking a path through the swirling tempest. "There, a gap in the current, see if we can reach it. We might outpace them." But the pirates were relentless, their ships weaving through the storm with practiced ease. The sky erupted in flashes of lightning, each strike illuminating the brutal ballet of aerial combat. From the deck, Lysa worked feverishly, adjusting the engines to keep the Harbinger agile despite its weathered frame. Suddenly, the pirates closed in, boarding hooks and grappling lines snaking through the air. Shouts and curses filled the decks as steel clashed, the ring of blades echoing against the hull. Rourke found himself face to face with a grizzled pirate lieutenant, their swords locked in a deadly embrace. "You'll not keep that cursed helm," the pirate snarled. "It's not yours to take," Rourke replied, muscles straining as he pushed back. "And I'll see it safely delivered, no matter the cost." The battle raged, a tempest of shadows and steel beneath the storm. Alina Drift moved silently through the chaos, her silver eyes gleaming with secrets yet to be revealed. Though her motives remained opaque, her presence lent an eerie assurance to the beleaguered crew. As the fight stretched on, the Harbinger's hull shuddered from the barrage, cracks appearing in the ancient wood. Rourke knew their time was running out. "Now Yorick, take us through the gap," he commanded. With a deft twist of the helm, the Harbinger plunged into the narrow channel of swirling currents. The pirates surged after them, but the treacherous winds caught their sails, tearing one ship apart in a cascade of splinters and fire. The remaining pirate ships faltered, and Rourke seized the moment to pull the Harbinger upward, escaping the deadly embrace. As dawn broke over the submerged islands, the battered crew gathered on deck, breathless but alive. "We've made enemies today," Rourke said grimly, "and they'll come for us again. But we'll face them as we face every storm with unyielding resolve." The ghost helm lay silent below, its curse a shadow over their victory. Yet the battle had forged the crew anew, their uneasy alliance tempered by fire and shared peril. The skies ahead were wide and uncertain, but for now, the Harbinger sailed free, carrying with it a captain's hope and a crew's fierce loyalty. But as the first light touched the horizon, a whisper of shadow stirred in the currents, promising that this was but the beginning of a far darker storm. The skies had darkened in uneasy shades as the Harbinger slipped away from the violent chase that had marked their narrow escape from the sky pirates. The air, once charged with the crackle of battle and the roar of engines, now fell into a heavy silence that pressed upon the crew's spirits like a thick shroud. Captain Rourke stood at the helm, his eyes narrowing against the creeping mist that swallowed the horizon, turning the world into a shadowed realm where reality wavered. The haunted sea stretched before them, a vast expanse of eerie calm where the usual currents that carried the ship's fragile frame seemed to falter, replaced by a stillness that whispered secrets only the doomed dared to hear. Beneath the Harbinger's keel, pale, ghostly lights shimmered, flickering like will-o'-the wisps beneath the water's surface, casting spectral reflections that danced along the ship's timbers and sent shivers through the hardened crew. Ilara, the navigator, lingered at the bow, her slender figure silhouetted against the creeping fog. Her breath came in slow, measured pulls as she stared into the shifting mists. The whispers began softly at first, indistinct murmurs curling through the chill air, but soon grew into voices, haunting echoes that seemed to seep from the depths below. They spoke in tongues lost to time, voices that carried the weight of sorrow and regret. Ilara's fingers tightened on the railing, her pale face paling further as memories she had long buried clawed their way to the surface. The failed voyage that had cost her a crew, the mistakes that had branded her a coward in her own eyes, all whispered in that ghostly chorus. "They're here," she murmured, barely audible, eyes wide and unblinking. "The lost ones, the drowned." Behind her, the murmurs stirred unease among the crew. Joss, the engineer, paced the engine room, the steady clang and hiss of the machinery a fragile heartbeat in the oppressive silence. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by a taut grimace as shadows flickered along the rusted walls. The lights dimmed inexplicably, and cold drafts whispered through the vents, carrying faint, ghostly laughter that made the hairs on his neck rise. He stopped, wrench in hand, listening, a primal part of him resisting the notion that such things could be real. "This place, its bleeding shadows," Joss muttered, voice rough. "It's like the curse's breath is in the very air we breathe." Below decks, murmurs of fear spread swiftly. Crew members exchanged nervous glances, their hands unconsciously clutching talismans or worn charms. The ghost helm, hidden safely beneath tarps in the captain's quarters, seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of its own, as if feeding on the despair creeping through the ship. Captain Rourke, feeling the weight of every eye upon him, retreated to the dim glow of his cabin. There, Myra awaited the enigmatic passenger, whose pale features and shadowy demeanor seemed almost otherworldly. The flicker of candlelight threw dancing shapes across the walls, merging with the ghostly silhouettes that sometimes appeared beyond the porthole, as if the sea itself reached hungrily toward the vessel. "You know more than you say," Rourke accused quietly, voice low with suspicion. "This curse, the helm, what are you hiding?" Myra's eyes flickered, a faint smile touching her lips. "Secrets are the currency of survival, Captain. but you've seen enough to understand that the Helm's power is not merely legend. You carry a weight that will test every fiber of your being. The conversation was interrupted by a sudden chill that swept through the cabin, snuffing out candles and plunging them into darkness. Outside, a distant wail echoed across the haunted sea, a mournful cry that seemed to pierce the very souls of those aboard the Harbinger. Rourke swallowed hard, the burden of command heavier than ever. "We press on," he declared, voice stealing against the creeping dread. "Whatever haunts these waters, we face it together." But as the ghostly lights flickered and the shadows lengthened, the crew knew their trial had only just begun. The haunted sea's embrace was cold and relentless, a test not only of their strength and skill, but of their very sanity. And in that spectral realm, past sins and present fears would rise like tides, threatening to drown them all. Below deck, whispers grew louder, and eyes darted nervously in the gloom. The curse of the ghost helm was no longer a distant threat, but a living, breathing force that haunted every corner of the Harbinger. And as the night deepened, the line between the living and the dead blurred, leaving only one certainty: survival would demand more than courage. It would demand confronting the ghosts within. The haunted sea held its secrets close, but the crew of the Harbinger was determined to unravel them, even if it meant losing themselves in the process. And as the spectral mists thickened, the ship sailed deeper into the unknown, the air heavy with unseen eyes watching, waiting for the moment when the curse would claim its next victim. The night was far from over, and the shadows whispered none would emerge unchanged. The spectral light of dawn was a pale promise, barely piercing the dense fog that clung to the ship like a second skin. Yet, even as the sun threatened to rise, the haunted sea refused to relinquish its grip. The crew moved like shades themselves, quiet, wary, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. Alara approached Rourke at the helm, her usual sharpness tempered by a vulnerability he rarely saw. "Captain, the currents are shifting, but not naturally. There's a force here, something stirring beneath." Rourke nodded grimly. "We'll need to navigate carefully. This place, it's testing us all." The ship creaked and groaned as if responding to an unseen presence. Somewhere amid the masts, a faint whisper echoed, a voice calling out in a language long forgotten. The crew stiffened, clutching at whatever anchors of reality they could find. Joss emerged from the engine room, wiping sweat from his brow despite the chill. "The engines are holding, but barely. Something's sapping the strength from the ship." Myra appeared silently beside Rourke, her eyes reflecting the ghostly glow. "The curse feeds not only on fear, but on the life around it. We must be vigilant." As the Harbinger pressed onward, the haunted sea seemed to close in, its embrace tightening like a noose. Each creak, each whisper, each shadow was a reminder. The past was never truly gone, and the curse was far from spent. Rourke tightened his grip on the wheel, his voice a low vow. "We'll face whatever comes." Together, but deep within the fog, unseen eyes glimmered, and the ghostly sentinels of the haunted sea watched, waiting for the moment to strike. The voyage had become a battle not just for survival, but for the very souls of those aboard the Harbinger. And the haunted sea's embrace was far from forgiving. The Harbinger glided silently through the thick, swirling mist that clung like a shroud around the small, floating island. The air was damp and cool, a sharp contrast to the stinging wind that lashed the airborne currents further out. Captain Rourke stood at the bow, his weathered hands gripping the railing as his grey eyes pierced the dense veil. Beside him, Navigator Ellen adjusted her grip on the charts, her sharp gaze flickering between the fog and the instruments clutched in her hands. "Visibility's near zero," Ellen muttered, her voice low but steady. "We should drop anchor and scout on foot." Rourke nodded, his scarred face tightening with resolve. "Agreed. We can't afford surprises, not with the ghost helm aboard." The crew worked swiftly, lowering the Harbinger gently onto the island's mist-shrouded dock. The wooden planks creaked softly beneath their boots as they disembarked, the world around them muffled and ethereal. Every sound was swallowed by the thick fogged, distant drip of water, the soft rustling of unseen creatures, the faint whisper of wind weaving through twisted branches. Rourke led the small party into the dense reeds that fringed the island's edge. The air was alive with the scent of damp earth and salt, mingled with the faint aroma of herbs and smoke. Ellen's compass spun erratically, the island's strange magnetic fields interfering with their instruments. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a lithe woman with deep amber eyes that shone with an uncanny intelligence. Her skin was sun-kissed and marked with intricate tattoos, each line and swirl telling a story lost to time. She wore flowing garments woven from reeds and feathers that rustled softly with her every movement. "Who trespasses on the Isle of Whispers?" she asked, voice smooth and measured. Rourke stepped forward cautiously. "I am Captain Rourke of the Harbinger. We seek passage and knowledge about the ghost helm." The woman's eyes flickered with recognition and something unspoken. "I am Mayli's keeper of secrets here. The helm you carry is bound to the fate of this world, and its curse is woven into the very winds you sail." Ellen exchanged a glance with Rourke, sensing the weight behind Melis's words. "We mean no harm, only to understand and deliver the helm to its destined place." Mayli studied them a moment longer before nodding. "Come, then. If you seek answers, you must walk the path of shadows and light." They followed her deeper into the island's heart, where twisted trees draped in phosphorescent moss cast a ghostly glow. At the center, a campfire crackled, its flames flickering against the night silence. Around it, Maylis began to recount the helm's dark history, a tale of ancient mariners cursed for their greed, doomed to wander the skies and seas as restless spirits. As the night deepened, the mist thickened, and distant howls echoed through the trees. Spectral figures flickered at the mist's edge, ghostly remnants of those lost to the curse. The crew tensed, hands moving to weapons as a cold dread settled over them. "You see," Maylis whispered, "the helm's curse is no mere legend. It binds the living and the dead, the seen and unseen. To carry it is to carry a burden heavier than any man can bear alone." Rourke met her gaze, the weight of his past failures pressing down like the mist around them. "Then we have no choice but to face it together." The fragile alliance, forged in the island's shadow, promised knowledge and hope, but also new dangers lurking just beyond sight. As the Harbinger awaited them in the mist, the crew prepared for the trials ahead, their spirits tethered by trust and the unyielding call of destiny. But as the flickering flames danced and shadows lengthened, a chilling thought took root in Rourke's mind. Was the true enemy the curse itself, or the secrets yet to be revealed? The mist whispered around them, carrying voices of the past and warnings for the future. And somewhere beyond the veil, the haunted sea waited, patient and unforgiving. The skies darkened as the Harbinger approached the distant island, the fabled terminus of their perilous voyage. A thick, unnatural fog curled around the ship's prow, blending with the low-hanging clouds that smothered the airborne currents. The ghost helm, resting heavily on the captain's quarters table, pulsed with a spectral light that seemed to breathe with each passing moment. Captain Rourke stood rigid at the helm, his gaze locked on the horizon where the island's silhouette barely pierced the mist. The air was thick with an oppressive silence. broken only by the creaking of the ship's timbers and the distant howl of the wind. His fingers curled tightly around the wheel, knuckles white, as memories of the accident that had shattered his career surged, unbidden ghosts of failure that the helm's curse now seemed eager to exploit. "Captain," Elara's voice cut through the heavy air, sharp and urgent. The helm's glowits intensifying, the crew's unsettled. Strange shadows cling to the rigging, and I swear I heard whispers on the wind. Rourke nodded grimly. "I know, Elara. This curse, it's no mere superstition. It's alive, and it's hungry." The crew gathered in the main hold, eyes wide and breaths shallow. Joran paced restlessly, hands trembling despite his usual composure. Myra stood apart, serene yet inscrutable, her gaze fixed upon the helm as if reading ancient secrets from its cursed surface. "You all feel it," Myra said softly, her voice echoing as if carried from another realm. "The helm is more than a relic. It's a vessel of doom, a beacon for the restless dead. Its curse feeds on fear and regret, twisting the fate of those who dare to bear it." Murmurs rippled through the assembled crew, a mixture of disbelief and terror. Rourke's heart pounded as he met their gazes. "We have come too far to turn back now," he said, voice steady despite the storm raging within him. "But we must face the curse head-on, or all will be lost." Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently. A tempest had descended, a silent, spectral storm that lashed the sails and howled through the rigging with unnatural force. The shadows lengthened, and the helm's glow flared, casting eerie illumination across the faces of the crew. Rourke gripped the wheel tighter, sweat mingling with the rain plastering his hair to his brow. "Hold fast," he commanded, voice booming over the roar of the storm. "This is our trial." Lightning crackled across the sky, illuminating ghostly figures drifting alongside the ship-lost souls, drawn to the helm's dark power. The crew's resolve faltered as fear threatened to unravel their unity. Elara's voice pierced the chaos. "Captain, the currents are shifting. If we can harness the wind's fury, we might outrun this curse." A fleeting hope sparked in Rourke's chest. Trusting her instincts, he adjusted the sails, steering the Harbinger into the heart of the storm. The ship groaned and pitched, but held true, slicing through the spectral gale. As the tempest waned, the helm's glow dimmed, but the price was clear. The crew was battered, shaken, and the curse's shadow lingered still. Rourke knew the final test awaited on the island, a choice between sacrifice and salvation. He retreated to his quarters, the helm before him. Fingers trembling, he reached out, feeling a coldness seep into his bones. The whispers grew louder, promising doom yet hinting at redemption. "What will it be, Captain?" A voice echoed in his mind, the voice of his former self, the man he feared he had become. With a deep breath, Rourke steeled himself. "I will not let this curse define me," he vowed aloud. "For my crew, for my honor, I will see this through." Outside, the crew braced themselves as the Harbinger sailed on toward the unknown. The helm's true curse awakening fully, and the fate of all aboard teetering on the edge of despair and hope. The journey was far from over, and the shadows that clung to the ghost helm were only beginning to reveal their terrible secrets.